Welcome into episode 18 of Through the Whistle. I'm your host, as always, Ty Belcher. And it's a little chilly in here, but gotta get it done. But it's been a week since we've last spoken. And on today's episode, we're going to talk about, all the games that happened yesterday. Well, not all the games, the key games in yesterday's NFL slate. Talk a little bit about Monday Night Football tonight. And we're also going to talk about Heisman Trophy and how USC is just going to put the world on notice in the next couple of years. But anyways, let's get into the NFL slate of yesterday. So in the big NFC matchup yesterday between the 49ers and the Bucs, very, very high stakes coming into this. Before this season started, everybody thought that Niners, Bucs, Rams were going to be the three teams fighting for the NFC Championship. But the Buccaneers said, no, not so fast. In the words of Lee Corso, not so fast, my friend. The Bucs suck. Easily. Very obvious. So, Niners. No Jimmy Garoppolo. During this game, they lose Deebo Samuel. And the defense for the 49ers basically told Tom Brady to pack your stuff and get out of here, old man. Like, you don't got to leave. We got to get the heck up out of here, in the words of Martin Lawrence. And Brock Purdy didn't just let the defense just carry it away, just score 21 points and just get out of there, let the defense handle everything. Brock Purdy, who was essentially is another Jimmy Garoppolo, they play essentially the same, because the Niners and the Ravens kind of have the same kind of thought process with their quarterbacks, which makes a lot of sense. Have your backup quarterback play a lot like your starting quarterback, and then you won't have to change up your offense. But anyhow, to stay on the 49ers and Brock Purdy was 16 of 21 for 185 yards and 2 touchdowns. Hey, I know the yards isn't that much. That's okay. That's fine. But the 2 touchdowns, that's a great game. He played amazing. Didn't put the ball in harm's way. I mean, he did throw an interception that did get called back. But aside from that, because it didn't really count, so who cares about it? But if he's going to keep playing like this, the Niners still have a strong chance of not only winning the division, but also winning the Super Bowl. Well, not winning the Super Bowl, but winning the conference and getting to another Super Bowl. And maybe Jimmy G's going to be back in time for that. That remains to be seen. But he's having a lot of outside help. Brandon Ayuk, who my friend Chandler has literally, praised all, before the season started, he said it's going to be a breakout season for Brandon Ayuk. He's going to finally take that next step. Just, it's his time. It's that time. But now it's just, boom, he's there. Especially with Deebo Samuel going down yesterday. Deebo having an ankle injury, which I thought was a torn ACL the way that it looked when I was watching the game. Looked like he tore his ACL or something, but they say it was just an ankle injury, kind of reminiscent what happened with Jerry Jeudy last year when he looked like he also tore his ACL, but just had a high ankle sprain. So Deebo's going to be out for at least a month. But that's why I lead to a hyper-reliance on Christian McCaffrey and Brandon Ayuk, because Christian McCaffrey is their playmaker. He's their new, I want to say, Swiss Army knife. Just like Deebo Samuel was, with Deebo being in the backfield, Deebo lining up outside. And Christian McCaffrey played a heck of a game yesterday. 153 total yards and 2 touchdowns. He's going to have to be able to shoulder that load. And it's going to be interesting to see, because we all know Christian McCaffrey is injury prone. He needs to drink some milk. I don't know who didn't allow him to drink milk in elementary school with his school lunch, but he should have drank more of it, because that man is brittle. But anyhow, he's going to have to essentially will this offense, to say the least. Him and Brandon Ayuk are going to have to step up a whole lot. Kyle's going to have to, start using George Kittle way more than he has this season, with George Kittle essentially being just another additional tackle. They're going to have to start scheming around, having Kittle and Ayuk out in a lot of pass plays, because George Kittle is way too good of a target, way too good of a tight end, way too good of an offensive weapon to not use on a down-by-down basis. And on the other side of all this 49ers praise and the 49ers can do this, and like the ceiling of the 49ers, we're just seeing the ceiling of the Tampa Bay Buccaneers just get lower and lower and lower. And Tom Brady just looks to be cooked. I said this in the earlier episodes of the podcast, sports talk show, whatever you want to call this. We talked about how the older quarterbacks, the old guard of quarterbacks is just slowly, each and every week just going downhill. I wasn't able to talk about it last week, his performance on Monday Night Football. If it wasn't for him making a comeback, we would have been talking about how trash he looked last week, because he looked bad. He looked very bad. And then this week, he comes out there, goes 34 or 55 with one touchdown, 2 interceptions, but that touchdown came in trash time. Like, the game was never close, like, ever. Never, like, no, it was bad. Like, all 60 minutes were bad. Like, you know it's bad when Fox is turning the game off with Tom Brady against another top NFC team in their headline game for the weekend. They said, nah, we're not going to do this to y'all. Like, come on, like, it's not college football. We're not stuck watching this game. We're gonna get y'all right. We're gonna look out for y'all. We're gonna go to this 49. We're gonna go to the Seahawks-Panthers game and the NFC South, NFC West showdown that's actually, competitive, unlike the game that you're watching right now. So they take off the Buccaneers. So we really do not see the bulk of the second half. Like, it's sad because you want to see, like, it's always hard to see top-tier players just deteriorate before your eyes. We saw it with Brett Favre. We saw it with Peyton Manning. We saw it, I know Cam Newton wasn't, like, an older player, but we saw it with Cam Newton with the deterioration because of his injuries. Like, it's hard to see somebody who you've seen play at such a high level each and every season just fall the face of the earth, like just fall off the cliff. And to credit of Max Kellerman, even though he was like, he called this like 8 years ago when Tom Brady was, still Tom Brady. But when you start falling off that cliff, if any of you have ever ran down a hill, rode a bike down a hill, it picks up steam fast. Like, you're going to go down way faster than you got up there. And I feel like that's kind of what we're seeing this season with Tom Brady and the Buccaneers. He can't really find Mike Evans. He can't really hit these guys. He set Godwin up for a kill shot yesterday, where if this was the early 2000s, Godwin would have been GG's in the chat, put him in a pack. Like, would have been bad. But he still took a pretty big hit, which, I don't know. Buccaneers, I want to stop talking about them so bad. I promise y'all, I do. I know. Nobody cares about a 5-win team. I understand. But they still have a chance to win the division. They're still the division leader right now. So you have to keep talking about them. And another game that was, more competitive, that consisted of another quarterback that looked bad, Dolphins versus the Chargers in the Sunday Night Football game. Tua Tagovailoa looked awful. He looked bad, 10-28 for 145 yards. And it just proves more and more that Brian Flores is right, that why do we don't want Tua, we want Justin Herbert. And they should have listened to him. If they would have listened to Brian Flores before they drafted Tua and got Herbert, the Dolphins messed around, would have had a division championship by now. Would have had probably a playoff win by now. But Tua is so mediocre, it literally proves the point of why they wanted to get Deshaun Watson. Like, personally, they should have just, in my thoughts, if we're just keeping all things just football and just keeping football, they should have just made the trade for Deshaun Watson, called it a day. Like, even if Deshaun Watson misses these 11 games, the Dolphins probably still are, with the way that Mike McDaniels coaches and the expertise that he has, they're probably still a 7-8 win team. Like, they're probably 7-4, 6-5, 8-3 when Deshaun comes back with Teddy B in those first 11 games. And you're in a way better position than you are with Tua, because let's be real. Let's be 100% honest. I believe that in this upcoming offseason, they have to make a decision on if they want to pick up Tua's fifth-year option. And what have you seen these last couple of weeks that will show you that you want to pick up his fifth-year option? Like, what has he done to make you think that he's deserving of a fifth-year option? I know I talked a lot of stuff about Herbert and Tua being all this, like, much better because he wins games and stuff. You know, a whole lot of trolling. But when you see his actual play, it's horrible. It's a whole lot of, if you can force him to throw the ball to the outside, like, you can't throw the ball in the middle of the field because, you know, that's the shortest throw you can make. If you can't do that, like, you cut that off, he's basically Uncle Rico out there. Like, what are you doing? He can't, his arm strength is too limited. Like, you have two of the best deep threats in all of football, like, bar none. And you can't complete a pass to the outside. Like, it's bad. It's bad. Like, it's horrible. It proves the point of why Tyreek Hill should be Offensive Player of the Year, because he's literally doing that and doing amazing numbers in spite of Tua Tagovailoa. And to give credit to Justin Herbert a little bit, yeah, he was 39-51, 367 yards, but if you're throwing 39 passes, you better have 300 so yards and a touchdown. A lot of drives came up empty with field goals. And I know points are points, but coming up empty with just a field goal is just, come on, gotta punch it in eventually. But this game I know I talked a lot about Herbert not being good against teams that are above 500 and stuff. So he finally gets another win over a team that's above 500, first time, and it's been a long while since he's done that. But now the Chargers are in a very good position now, because they now own the head-to-head over the Dolphins. And the Dolphins are only a game ahead of the Chargers. Dolphins went from, they might end up getting a 1 seed, all this other stuff, to now fighting for the 6 seed, looking like they can drop down to 7 seed because Dolphins lose one more game, Chargers win another game. Dolphins are now the 7 seed. And every team in the NFL and every team in the AFC should be trying their best to avoid being the number 6 or 7 seed. Like, I would be scared, because if you're the 6th seed, if you're the 7th seed, you either have to play the Bills or the Kansas City Chiefs or the Bengals. And which one of those teams do you want to play? I'll wait, because you have especially as two warm weather teams. You have Miami coming up to Cincinnati, Ohio in January. Everybody who's from Ohio knows Ohio weather in January is probably the worst weather in history. Like, horrible. And then you have a chance of also being stuck going up to Buffalo in January, where you could be playing in 2 feet of snow. Like, it's nothing. Like, it snows just religiously up there. They have to shovel off their roofs so it doesn't cave in. That's how much snow they can get. And then you have a possibility of playing Patrick Mahomes and Andy freaking Reid. Like, who wants to do that? Like, who in the smorgasbord of teams you want to play want to pick those 3 teams? No. If you want to play anybody, you want to get to the 5th seed. If you are out of contention for your division championship, you want to be the 5th seed so you can play the Titans. Because the Titans are not that good. The Titans just got their teeth kicked in by the Jacksonville Jaguars, where Trevor Lawrence was looking like, hey, y'all remember me? I'm that all-time talent. I'm that generational talent that everybody was talking about. So if you're the Dolphins, first of all, you want to win the division because you need a home game. I know everybody in that organization is like, hey, if Tua has to play in the cold, we're going to get beat by 70 points. Like, we're going to get absolutely manhandled if we had to go to a cold weather state and play on the road from that type of hostile environment. Because Tua cannot produce in that type of environment. Like, it's seen. We've seen it so many times. So, Dolphins have a lot to think about going into this offseason because, hey, Tua, not that guy. Not that guy, pal. And then elsewhere in the AFC, the Bengals took on the Browns in a game that had a lot of AFC North stakes because the Browns, sticking around 5-17, got Deshaun Watson back. Browns have had Joe Burrow's number since the day he's walked into the NFL. And Joe Burrow finally gets the monkey off his back and beats the Browns. He doesn't have the best game. He's 18-33 for 239 yards, 2 touchdowns, and an interception. But he still gets the monkey off his back, the mental hurdle of, dang, why can't I beat them? All this other stuff. Yeah, this, that, and the third. But it's always easier when you have a guy like Joe Mixon in the backfield with you. Joe Mixon's missed the past couple games, and yeah, the Bengals haven't missed a step without him. But when you have Joe Mixon back there, it just makes things 1,000 times easier. He goes for 106 total yards in his first game back. Like, 96 rushing yards in your first game back. Like, what more can you ask for? It makes this offense even scarier. They beat the Browns without, T. Higgins, without Tyler Boyd. So it was essentially just Jamar Chase out there. And Jamar Chase does what he does. Touchdown. Joe Burrow puts the ball in an absolute window. And it's just, if you're the Bengals, you're just thinking to yourself, like, we're going to get back to the Super Bowl. Like, no doubt in their, I'm 900% sure. There is no doubt in their mind that no matter if they get a top 4 seed or a bottom 3 seed, they're going to make it back to the Super Bowl. That's just the type of confidence they have. And no, it's not a cockiness about them because it's a confidence because they've actually done it. They've done things to prove that they can do that. They beat the Chiefs. They've beat the Titans. They've beat the Browns, got the monkey off their back. And it's just, all these things are just culminating to, we got this, especially down the stretch. Like, having those big wins down the stretch are just so big for a team's confidence. It's just, it's huge. Like, there's nothing else you can say, but it being so helpful to your team's confidence and just knowing that we can go on the road, beat you. You're going to come to our crib. We're going to beat you up if you come to the crib. It's just extreme confidence from Joe Burrow and this Bengals team. Ooh, sorry about that. I had to sneeze. I'm trying to fight that off for a couple minutes now. But the Bengals defense is not just it's just not the offense doing everything. It's not a operation where we're just gonna outscore you, and that's what matters. This defense has done an amazing job. Like, last year, defense got a lot of flack. Like, this defense is blah, 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 this, that, and the third. But the defense stopped Derrick Henry. Now, they stopped that man. And we all know how hard that is to do. And they followed that up a couple weeks later with playing the best running back in the league, in my opinion, Nick Chubb. And they said, you thought that was we were just joking? You thought that was just luck that we stopped Derrick Henry? No. Let me show you what we did to him. And keep Nick Chubb down to 2.4 yards a carry. And it's not even that Nick Chubb wasn't getting a lot of carries. He just couldn't get the ball going. Like, he got 13 carries, 10 carries in the first half, and he just couldn't get anything going. Like, it was bad. And you don't really see Nick Chubb really get stopped or anything like in that type of nature. It was just so impressive. It was such an impressive performance by this defense for the Bengals. It's just, they deserve more respect than they've been getting. And on the other side of the sideline, we had Deshaun Watson and the Browns, who are now 5-8. You need a lot of help if you want to stay in the playoff race, because you have teams ahead of you, such as the Bengals / Ravens. You have teams like the Chargers, who have the head-to-head over you. You have teams like the Dolphins / Bills, who are ahead of you. You have a team like the Jets, who's ahead of you. The Jets, who have a tiebreaker over you, too. So it's like the season's not done, but it's kind of done for the Browns when it comes to making the playoffs. Their next 4 games are the Ravens, Saints, Commanders, and Steelers. They're going to have to go 4-0 in the next 4 weeks. Only good thing about that is Deshaun Watson looks way better than he did last week against the Texans. 26 for 42, 276 yards, a touchdown, and 1 interception. But he looks better than what he was doing against the Texans, where he was skipping passes to people, underthrowing everything, looked off. Like, timing was off and everything. But we all know with more reps, it's going to get better. Like, more live snaps, not the, practice snaps. But if I'm the Browns, regardless, you have to keep playing Deshaun Watson. You have to let him knock off all the rest completely so you can go to the next season full force. And hopefully, the Ravens didn't look too good the Ravens didn't look too good offensively against the Steelers yesterday, but their defense played great. They were a bend, don't fold type of team yesterday against the Steelers, where the Steelers got to the red zone twice, but got 2 interceptions. So the Ravens Saints are very winnable games, like extremely winnable games. The Commanders are a very good team. They're also winnable. But the Ravens and Saints and Steelers are all games that you should win. Like, no questions asked. You should win those games, especially if Lamar doesn't play next weekend. Like, come on. I think, and to talk about the Lamar thing, I personally don't think Lamar should take another snap this season. Like, playoffs or not, you do not take another snap this season unless they tell you, like, give you their word and say, we're going to pay you this all season. Because why am I going to put my body in harm's way for a team who doesn't even appreciate and value me? So that's the whole interesting dynamic, because the Lamar Jackson stuff stemmed from Deshaun Watson getting his type of contract, because that's the type of contract Lamar is looking for. And it's it's reasonable because Lamar has a playoff win with said franchise. He has an MVP with said franchise. He's won multiple division championships with the franchise. And Deshaun did none of that with the Browns. He only has 1 playoff win, just like Lamar. So it's just like, if he has that, I need that. Like, at least, that's the minimum. So if I'm Lamar, hey, either pay me or I'm out. And lastly, we're going to get into a game that hurt me yesterday in NFC. The Eagles treated my New York Giants like we were a JV team, scout team during practice. And it hurt. It hurt for me to watch, They didn't expect much from us this season. But then we started winning games, and I was like, I expect a lot from us again. So it's the whole back and forth between wanting to win but not wanting to win because I want a higher draft pick. This whole little back and forth is hard. It's like torn 2 places. And the Eagles just absolutely beat the dog crap out of us. 48-22. Jalen Hurts, MVP, like I said a month ago. 21-31, 294 total yards and 3 total touchdowns. MVP. I just don't know what else you want me to say. Converts a 4th down to Devontae Smith that ends up going for a touchdown. 4th and 7 at that. It wasn't even 4th and 1, he did a little razzle dazzle. No, he 4th and 7 dropped back like the 3rd down. I'm chilling back here, dime to Devontae Smith. Even though Devontae Smith, if it was like I said earlier about Godwin, it was the early 2000s. Devontae Smith would have been bad, but it's not the 2000s. It's 2022. You can't really hit guys like that anymore. So Devontae Smith touchdown on 4th and 7. We just absolutely just get boat raced. Like boats raced. Miles Sanders, 17 rushes for 144 yards, 2 touchdowns. And that makes things worse. We haven't won a game in a month. Like, I just don't know if anybody's noticed that, but we haven't won a game in a month. Like, we haven't won a game since we beat the Texans a month ago. Like, literally tomorrow will be an exact month from the last time we won a game. And the next 4 games are Commanders, Vikings, Colts, Eagles. And I'm going to be 100% honest because I'm an honest young man. There's only like one confirmed win in there, and that's the Colts, because the Colts are just, Matt Ryan just sucks. So, this is looking like, should have just lost those games at the beginning of the season, because losing or tying, because there's dumb ties in NFL. Yeah, the Commanders this week, who are fresh off a bye. And in the DMV. And then we had to go play the Vikings. So I could go probably a month and a half before I see a win. And that just hurts me. That's rocks me to my core, man. But it's just, I don't know why I allowed myself to get like hopeful about the Giants, because I knew this was coming. I literally knew that, hey, the other shoe was going to fall eventually. Like, it has to. We're the New York freaking Giants. So I just don't know. We're just last place in the division. I just don't know. But hopefully we pick it up, beat the Commanders this week. That'd be great. I'll be happy. Well, early Christmas present. That'd be great. But anyhow, we're going to hit our first break of today's episode. We're going to be right back. We're going to talk a little bit about the Heisman Trophy and how Lincoln Riley is really like one of those ones, for real. And we're also going to talk a little bit about Monday Night Football to conclude this episode. You know, same with NFL with a little college football in between. So we'll be right back. Make sure you stay tuned. Right back with Through the Whistle, episode 18. Welcome back into episode 18 of Through the Whistle. Ty Bill, your host. And let's just jump right into Heisman Trophy, and as well as some awards from this past weekend. So we're going to start off with seasonal awards. We're going to conclude with the Heisman Trophy. So, quarterback of the year was Max Duggan, which makes sense because, it doesn't really make sense a lot. Because back when I was a kid, back in the early 2000s, mid to late 2000s, when I was a young child, the Davey O'Brien Trophy would go to the Heisman Trophy winner. Like, that was low-key the indicator for if you're going to win the Heisman as a quarterback, you're going to get the Davey O'Brien and Walter Camp and Maxwell Trophy. You usually sweep all 4 of the big awards, the 4th one being, position specific. If you're running back, you'll get a Doak Walker, other stuff. But Davey O'Brien this year goes to Max Duggan. Very deserving of it. Played his heart out at TCU. And I don't really have that big of a problem with that because he has a very good argument for it. But when it comes to the receiver of the year and the running back of the year this season, the Doak Walker Trophy is supposed to go to the best running back in college football. And for 11 weeks, that running back, the best running back was Blake Corum from Michigan. Blake Corum gets hurt right before halftime of the Michigan-Illinois game in week, 12, because of the bye week. So week 12, and he ends the season with over 1,400 yards. And, like, plays great in every single game that he plays in. Bijan Robinson from Texas wins the Heisman. He wins the Doak Walker for best running back, even though against TCU he didn't do anything. Against Bama he didn't do anything. So how does that work? Like, I'm confused, because if Blake Corum was, like everybody believed before he got hurt, was at worst a top 4 candidate for the Heisman. If he plays against Ohio State, he probably wins the Heisman. Like, if he gets hurt during the Ohio State game at halftime, like same exact point, has 110 yards, a touchdown, he gets hurt that game, he probably still wins the Heisman. But since he gets hurt in week 12 against Illinois, he's just, clean your hands of him. Like, it doesn't make sense, because he's literally the best running back in college football right now. The only person who I thought should have had a chance of even having an argument for best running back was Gibbs out of Alabama, because how much of the offense is like predicated around him, because Alabama's offense is just bad. But that's just stupid. Like, it was just very self-intensive when it comes to college football awards, because as well as Duggan and Bijan Robinson, 2 Texas guys winning awards at their position, Marvin Harrison Jr. didn't win the Biletnikoff Trophy for the best receiver. And if anybody in college football was watching college football, any fan, I don't care if technical difficulties have struck again. What would through the woods be without some technical difficulties? But anyhow, to finish what I was saying about the wide receiver of the year award, if you were to just take 2 random people, right? You show them Hyatt from Tennessee's best game, which was Alabama, where he was just running wide open, all this other stuff. And then you take Marvin Harrison's best game, which he has a lot of arguments for what his best game was. You can probably go Penn State or another game like that, where he's just absolutely unguardable regardless. Regardless. He gets absolutely snubbed from wide receiver of the year. His hands are better, his routes are better. And even if you look at it at a statistical standpoint, he at one point was 50% over the course of, I want to say it was 5 or 6 games. He literally accounted for about either 49 or 51% of Ohio State's receiving yards over a stretch of games. Not even just receiving yards, but receptions, receiving yards, receiving touchdowns was all him. And it's just what more can you ask for? Everybody in the NFL, every NFL scout knows Marvin is going to be the best receiver in next year's draft class. We all know he's going to be the best receiver in next year's draft class. If a scout were to be if we were to say Hyatt or Harrison Jr., which one are you picking? They're going to say Marvin Harrison every day of the week, twice on Sundays, because that's what we're going to need him the most. What else did y'all want this man to do? Did you want him to have a Devontae Smith type season where he's just 3,000 yards and all this other stuff? A Michael Crabtree type season, Randy Moss type season, Justin Jefferson type season, Jamar Chase type season? That's what y'all wanted from Marvin Harrison to even have a chance at the award? It's just stupid. So now for the Heisman. Caleb Williams won the Heisman, deservingly so. Played great all season, elevated USC from trash to a playoff contender. And it just shows that Lincoln Riley is just a all-time great play caller. Because to have 3 Heisman winners, 3, in the last 6 seasons is just unheard of. Like, that's just, it's just so, it's so, like, rare to see. And on top of that, to have 5 finalists in the last 7 years, Lincoln Riley is such a great coach. It's just, I know he doesn't win the big games. I know he has that stigma around him where, yeah, he can't win the big one. He can't, like, he doesn't recruit defense. Yeah, I know, he doesn't recruit defense. I talked a lot about that last Monday with USC not being able to tackle, but you have to give respect to him because he's adapted his offense around different play styles. Baker Mayfield doesn't play like Kyler. Baker didn't play like Jalen Hurts. Jalen Hurts didn't play like Caleb. And Caleb doesn't play like Jalen Hurts. And it's just, doesn't matter because they all just seamlessly, like, it's just like a continuous cycle. And even if we go to that first Spencer Rattler year during the COVID year, Spencer didn't really play like Jalen, in my opinion. Like, he was more so, I don't even know what to compare Spencer Rattler to, but Spencer played a pretty good season that first year he was starting during the COVID year. He played pretty well, and it's just, if you're a young quarterback, if I'm a quarterback in high school, like #1 quarterback in the nation, if I was, well, barring that I'm not a Michigan fan in this hypothetical, I'm going to play with Lincoln Riley. Like, if Lincoln Riley wants me, I'm going out there because, one, I know he's going to call an offensive game plan that's going to fit what I do best. Like, he's going to find a way to get me in positions to look good. 2, I know I can be a Heisman finalist at least 1 of 3 years that I'm starting, easily, because he's done it with everybody he's had besides Spencer Rattler. Like, it's so impressive to see someone be able to produce, like, to get so many young men to that point where they're Heisman finalists. So many young men who are first-round picks. If Jalen was there for more than a year, he probably could have been a first-round pick. You have Baker Mayfield, who went #1. Kyler Murray, who went #1. You have Caleb Williams, who is already slated as the #1 pick. If he were, everybody's saying, well, in the NFL media world, with interviews with scouts and GMs and all this other stuff, said if he came out this year, he would have been #1. If he came out in last year's draft, he would have been #1. So it's just impressive to see how one person can just mold these young guys into being top-tier talent. But on the other hand, it just makes you think of, like, what about Spencer Rattler made it not work? Like, what about Spencer made it so hard for him to, work in that type of offensive system? What made him regress from year 1 starting to year 2 starting to getting replaced by Caleb Williams, where last season, a lot of people believe that, hey, Spencer Rattler plays halfway decent, he's going to go first round, especially with Kenny Pickett being the only first-round quarterback. Like, come on. Like, let's be real. So it's kind of, I would take that as a, like, knack at Spencer Rattler on how can you do that. And we've seen everybody else the last 7 years just be a rose, just bloom. So it's interesting to think about how Spencer was unable to sustain the success that the other quarterbacks have. And even when you go from the year 1 to year 2 stuff, Baker jumped from Heisman finalist to Heisman winner to, Kyler sitting behind Baker. So I won't really use him. Caleb Williams from year 1 to year 2, going from losing to Oklahoma State, losing games, not having that mental fortitude to this season at USC, having a lot of times where he either got down and down on himself like he did last year, and just overcoming that adversity, being able to talk to, like, Lincoln Riley being able to talk to his guys and be like, hey, like, you're good, do this, blah, 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 you're good. Like, just keeping his guys composed is just such an amazing quality to have in a coach. So we're going to hit our second break, our last break of this episode. We'll talk a little bit about Monday Night Football, and we're going to talk a little bit about, we're not going to talk about the betting side of it, but we're going to talk a little bit about Monday Night Football, and we're going to be right back. We're going to wrap up the show after Monday Night Football. We'll be right back with Through the Whistle, episode 18. So welcome back to episode 18 of Through the Whistle, and we're going to just go ahead, jump right into the Monday Night Football waters. So Troy Aikman and Joe Buck, two of my idols in a sense when it comes to commentating and being in the media world. They have the honor of calling a game that has Mac Jones once again. We all saw it earlier this season when they called the Bears-Patriots game. But tonight, instead of Justin Fields, it's going to be Kyler Murray. And Kyler Murray and the Cardinals have had a very underwhelming season. Cliff Kingsbury's essentially out the door already. Doubt that he's able to come back next season. Doubt that the organization will want him back, especially with the way that the Cardinals have played this season. But the Cardinals go in tonight with essentially nothing to lose, honestly. Basically out of playoff contention. And then the Patriots are fighting for their playoff lives on the other hand, where they need this win to stay close in both the playoff race and the divisional race. So this game is just very pivotal for both, not even both teams, but just for the Patriots. I personally believe that the Cardinals are going to win tonight. Like, there's so many variables that you have to account for when you play against Kyler Murray and a guy like DeAndre Hopkins. And especially if Rondale Moore is playing tonight, it's going to be just too much for them to handle. You saw that they couldn't handle Justin Fields with a lesser offense. It's just too much for them to handle. Like, we've seen the Patriots struggle the last couple games. Saw them lose to the Bills. Saw them lose the week before Thanksgiving to the Vikings. It's just, hey, get together. They're coming off a long week out there in New England. But I just don't think they have what it takes to win this game tonight, especially since, in the gambling world, I'm prolific. I'm very, let's say, entrenched into the sports betting world. There's this guy called Boogie with Trent on Instagram, TikTok, whatever social media platform you want to use. And he does this thing called the Surgical Six. And the first five have all been correct. And he's usually a cursed man. Like, he's usually cursed. It usually goes downhill. And his last team he needs is the New England Patriots. So with him needing the Patriots and him being a jinx, that I think he is, the Cardinals are going to win tonight. Like, it just has to be. Because the Cardinals just have so much, to lose, both team-wise and just organizationally. Coach on the hot seat. Like, what more do you have to do? Kyler Murray was able to play Call of Duty all week because he had a longer week. So it's just like, hey, Cardinals. Fresh off, they're going to be fresh. And there's just nothing else I can say. The Cardinals are just going to win. Kyler's legs are going to be the deciding factor. Because we all saw Justin Fields just have a field day against them. So that wraps up episode 18 of Through the Whistle. Thank you, as always, for watching. Please make sure to like, share, and subscribe to the channel. Leave a comment. Thank you all for, staying along this process at 18 episodes through. And I'll be back hopefully on Thursday after my final can get in here, record an episode before I hit the road, go back to Columbus. But anyhow, you guys have a safe and productive week. Until the next time we talk, thank you. And as always, I'm Ty Belcher, and we played through the whistle.